How many of you have ever read the book, $40 Million Slaves? Maybe you could say what you were trying to convey when you wrote the book 20 years ago.
Yeah, that's a hell of a question. But so I was speaking to this class during Black History Month, of course, like February. And so at some point I finished talking, and after I finished, this young girl, she raised her hand and said, "Mr. Rhoden, that's all well and good, but tell me, who was the first white athlete to integrate the NBA?" And at first I was going to say it's ridiculous, but then I realized that in this young girl's life, she was like in middle school, the NBA had always been 80% black. The NFL had always been 60-something% black. And I thought for a whole generation of young black kids, and young people in general, there was no sense of how did you get there? You have no idea that you have something to fight for.
You talk about the story of the black jockey,
Yeah.
and that's where that phrase, the jockey syndrome, comes in.
But yeah, the jockey syndrome, you know, there was a time when black jockeys ruled horse racing. It was kind of like the NBA is now. Black jockeys won something like 10 of the first 12 Kentucky Derbies, probably more than that. But black jockeys were the preeminent athletic force in this country when horse racing was the thing. Black jockeys dominated. You had black jockeys like Isaac Murphy, who was making 3 times the amount of money as white jockeys. And so they were a very powerful force when horse racing was the big thing in our industry. Well, once it became lucrative, the white power structure decided we got to end this. So what they did when it was time to relicense, they changed the whole way of licensing jockeys. So every jockey had to be relicensed. Well, guess who systematically was not relicensed? Black jockeys. So within a matter of 10 years, what had been this dominant force was basically, just like that, was eliminated. The same thing happened to black men in the NFL. When the NFL first started, back in 1920, you had some black players. Same thing with baseball. 1895, you had some black players. But when it was decided that we want to basically, you're taking jobs from white people, they made these gentlemen agreements where black folks were automatically done, eliminated, no more. Football, you wouldn't have any football players until 1948. Baseball, you didn't have any more black baseball players until Jackie Robinson. Just because overnight the people owned it. If you don't own it, you don't own it. You just rent it, you know, and they basically eliminated it. And so I said, well, okay, so here we are 2024. And that's why I kind of am sensitive to the whole, what I call the Great White Hope thing. Because I'm always looking at that. And remember I told you the young lady said, when she asked me, the 6th grader asked, who was the first white player to integrate the NBA? Because she thought that it had always been like that. And what I was trying to tell the young guys, that don't think that people are happy about this, the fact that you guys are 70% of the NFL and 70% of the NBA. That will not always have to be the case. And I was asking these couple of young brothers who play, and they were saying, somebody said, man, why do you always talk about history? I said, you know, your coach, you spend about 80% of your time, most athletes spent about 80% of their time watching film. And you watch film. Now, the film doesn't have anything to do with the future. Everything you're watching has to do with last week's game, last year's game, last week's practice. Why do you think your coach has you spending so much time watching the past if it doesn't matter? Well, why? Because they want you to find out the mistakes you made. Oh, that's what I did. Every time he does this, I do that. That's why I lose. And I said, that's why they want you to watch film. That's kind of what this is. It's kind of game film. How do we make the same mistakes over and over and over again? And if you don't watch game film, you're doomed to repeat the same stuff. And after you tell them that, they say, oh yeah, that's why history is important. I was at an NBA playoff game, and it just occurred to me, I was sitting, watching the game, it was Phoenix somebody, and it just hit me, I said, man, these brothers are really happy Everybody's happy. It just don't, because I was still thinking the struggle is, man, these guys are happy. Everybody's happy. We had just come out of the George Floyd thing, when they let the the football battle, write stuff on their sneakers and write stuff, racism on kind of like, all right, we'll let y'all, if y'all play, just play. Y'all can write it on the end zone and do whatever, just play. And so they did that. We kind of got through that. And then 4 years after that, man, it's kind of like it never happened. Everybody is happy. And I think it becomes when money is the highest value in the society, which it is here, clearly, money has become the highest value in our society. And when money is the highest value in your society, all bets are off. Morality, what you believe in, because everything can be purchased at a price. I'd never seen owners be as off-put and almost intimidated as they were when these brothers in the NFL were kneeling, because they didn't know, they couldn't control it. These cats were like, they kneeling and they were pleading with these cats, could you please stop, because we're losing money. And for me, at my age and my experience, from Ali to Kurt Flood, to Wilma Rudolph, to all these black athletes who had taken stands, and then, you jump to Kaepernick, it was almost exciting and exhilarating to see that. And then what they did, and this kind of gets back to money being the highest value, they basically, what will it take to get you to stop? So Malcolm's group, they formed this thing called the Players Coalition. And the Players Coalition became essentially the self-appointed bargaining group with the owners, right? And basically the owners came up with a figure, and the figure was about 32 million, which when you think about it, there are 32 NFL teams. And those owners could take out $1 million out their wallet, which is like no money. But 32 million is a cheap price to get these cats to stop. And basically, they gave them $32 million to give to whatever charities or whatever and stop freaking kneeling.
But for athlete activism, it's usually you get caught up in whatever the moment is. You mentioned, George Floyd or whatever the event might be. We look for athletes to get involved, and now we see what's going on in the campuses.
Yeah.
I mean, other than Kyrie, there's not a whole lot of athlete engagement there. Just broadly, well, what would the next chapter be? I do want to talk about Reggie Bush. I mean, this moment. What does that mean in this whole pantheon?
People have, if you were going to write the next chapter,
right?
Which, by the way, if I was, I would have written it by now. But something that's been phenomenal is the liberation of college athletes. It's something that we probably never thought would happen. You played football at Stanford. I was going to Morgan, and a lot of what we wrote was about how athletes in college, particularly at Power 5 schools, were basically on this plantation. Where these people, coaches, were making lots of money. The coaches had everything, and the athletes basically had nothing. And I wrote a lot of the stories about athletes who had their careers ruined because of taking impermissible, what they call extra benefits.
Right.
I wrote a lot of those stories about young brothers who were going off to, and not so much sisters because the money wasn't that great, but a lot of brothers who were going off like the UNLV, place like Michigan, Chris Webber, the Fab Five, all these guys who were, who could not get money to like put gas in their car or to go on a date or whatever. It was like they were made to feel dirty by taking impermissible benefits. And, Reggie Bush, same thing. They took this guy's Heisman Trophy away because now everything they were doing is now with NIL is legal. There's no penalties. You can give people, all these big schools are getting collectives, Alabama, Tennessee, Vanderbilt, they're raising like almost $1 billion of money to above board give people money. the same thing that got Reggie Bush banned and other people banned is now fine. So I thought it was great that finally the NCAA said they realized they were wrong. Forget the legal word. I don't know. It's not reparations. It's not. It could be restitution.
So this is
would be an extra.
This
that
is
would
the
be
happiness chapter too. Then I mean,
it's
Reggie
happy.
Bush is now happy.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's happy because he was probably pissed for a long time. I don't know, when you spend 10 years in prison when you shouldn't and they let you out, I don't think you're happy, right? I don't think it's happy. You get justice.